Welcome to our Wednesday edition of our fireside chat. Again, it's another beautiful summer-like day, so hopefully it's finally here. We began talking yesterday about a subject that's very important at any time, but especially now. Because what we're facing now as these restrictions begin to lift, we now have more freedom than we would have had before when this first the shutdown of our restaurants and of workplaces began to clamp down on us. When we're secluded in our homes, there's ultimately, after we get over the initial adjustment, there's a certain safety factor because I'm not getting exposed to anything. Now we have to make decisions as the restrictions begin to lift. What am I able to do? What do I feel comfortable doing? Do I want to go to the beach right now? The issue that's facing me right now is when, and how do we open church up? And there are many different views out there among many different pastors. And I've heard from many different people in the church who have their own individual view of what we ought to do. And it comes down to this. It's the understanding what faith really is. And what we've begun to talk about is three different things that can appear as faith: faith, foolishness, and presumption. And as you exercise the decisions to step back into your job, back into society, back into whatever your normal life was before, as we're allowed to do that, you've got to decide whether you're really operating in faith, because we need to do everything by faith. And hopefully that's one of the lessons that this time and this pandemic has brought home, is to realize for many people how little they lived their life by faith, because when all this happened, they collapsed and they fell apart and hopefully began to get back together again. And when all this came in on me, I started to get shaky at first, but then I've learned to look inside. And what I've built into me over the last months and over the last years especially, I found was an inner strength to help me get through this time, that if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't learned how to walk by faith, and believe me, I'm still learning that, then I would have collapsed under the pressure of this, as many people have. And so this is a critical time. This is a wake-up call to find out where we really are. But to do that, we need to learn what the difference is between real Bible faith and foolishness, and then something else called presumption. Faith is simply taking God at His word and acting on it. And that sounds very simple, and it is. But we need to understand really what's involved in that, or else we can make a huge mistake. I shared with you yesterday, I've sat with with families of people that stood in faith dealing with very serious diseases, and they died. They died, quote unquote, in faith, in God's word. And the question as they look at me is, how did this not work? How did God fail? And then they tend to pull away from God, stop trusting God. There was apparently a big Christian singer that's walked away from his faith recently, another one that's happened before. And as I looked at his testimony, it's because God was just not real to him. Well, the greatest way to know God's real to you is to learn to walk by faith in His word and watch God answer your prayers. So the question comes up, if I've stood in faith and God didn't answer my prayers, what's wrong? The mistake most people make is they question God. They question His word. Well, I did believe, and yet it didn't work. Well, one of you's wrong. Either God's word is wrong or you're wrong. And I learned a long time ago not to come against God's word and to question whether God's word's the truth or not. But this is what we do. We question God's word, whether it's true or not. And what we're going to find out is the very basis of answered prayer is trusting God. So how can we trust Him when we don't really believe that His word is true? And here's where the issue comes. It's where you believe it. So the Christians, and I've known many of them, I've been one, that I spend time in the Word. I confess the Word. I read the Word. I memorize the Word, and yet it doesn't seem to be working, Pastor. But when you memorize the Word, when you're reading the Word, you're putting it in your mind. And that's a very important first step, is to get it into your mind. But Jesus never talks about believing with your mind. He talks about believing in your heart. And your heart's down in here. It's your spirit man. It's that inner man. And the reason so many Christians fail in their faith is they don't know the difference between believing in their mind and believing in their heart. And so they say, I did believe God's word. I did agree with God's word. I did believe in God's word. I believed God's word. Yes, but did you just believe it with your mind, or did it really become part of your heart? And that's all that makes all the difference. It's got to get in your mind before it can get in your heart. But getting in your mind is not enough. And most people don't do what it takes to get it down in their heart. So I want to begin to talk to you. Yesterday we talked about just identifying where you are. I'm going to help give you some understanding now about what these differences are between being in true faith, biblical faith, being in foolishness, which is where I think I'm in faith, but I'm not, and then being in presumption. So the thing to learn, take away from today is am I believing in my heart, or am I just believing in my mind? I'll leave you with this little clue. I learned a long time ago that when I'm truly believing in my heart, I know it. There's no doubt that I'm doing it. Whatever comes against me doesn't shake where I am, because it's become part of me. And we'll pick up here tomorrow. I hope this is beginning to open your eyes to maybe you're not where you think you are. Maybe it begin to answer some questions as to why certain things happen. But what we foundation is always God's word is the truth. And we can trust God's word to do what it says it'll do. So have a wonderful rest of the day whenever you're watching this, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We love you. Remember, this is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.